Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are really excited to have you on our sixth episode of the Baker and Miller educational series that are hosted by CHOPIN Technologies. Just to remind you who we are, CHOPIN Technologies is one of the 8 companies brand held by the KPM Analytics Group. And today, and actually the aim of all the webinar series to share with you, with the millers and bakers and all the people who are interested in the grain industry, some keys, some knowledge, experiences when we're thinking about and we talk about the quality control by working with the flour and dough. So before getting into the heart of the matter, I will give you some practical information about this webinar. For those who don't know me, my name is Hanna Zhuganova, and I'm food and application specialist in CHOPIN Technologies. And today I will be your speaker. So the presentation will last around 40-50 minutes, after which I will try to answer to all your questions. So don't hesitate to ask your questions thanks to the question and answer section made by Zoom. And of course, I will try to answer, but if you will have no time to answer, or if you will have after the questions, you can contact us or we will contact you by mail that you provide during the registration. So one final point, this webinar will be recorded, so you will soon receive a link to access to today's recording. And you can revisit and to see if you miss or you want to see in detail some interesting points, or to share the link with your colleagues or other people who will be interested in. So it was just a few organization points. And now, without any words, I will suggest to move to our topic today. And today we'll talk about the proofing, how to master a key step in the baking process. So the main goal of this presentation is not to make a detailed theoretical course. We want to provide you a very quick refresh about the following key points. And we want to talk about what is exactly the proofing, how does it work, what the impact of proofing on the final products, what challenges do consumers and also producers face in relation to proofing, and what factors influence this proofing process and how we work with this. So in conclusion, we will share the ideas and tools and also the solution from CHOPIN Technologies that we believe that can assist you and help you and bakers to master this very critical process of baking. So as usual, I will try to contextualize this a little bit, the context, and I will start with the baking. And it's not a secret that baking is a very complex process and it's a versatile process, and it will can vary depending on the country, manufacturer, product, etc. So for example, if you being produced buns or bread or sandwich or patisseries, the process will be not the same, it will be different, because you will not be used the same recipe, equipment, or, for example, exact process of the baking. So when it comes to producing of the same time of the product, for example, like a bread, the baking process can vary based on factors like product type. It can vary from country to country, regional differences, and of course, this is the consumer expectations. So this variation is due to the fact that one consumer will desire more, for example, gold and brown crust bread, while another will prefer to have less toasted appearances. So additionally, volume of this bread will be not the same, they will be different, and it will influencing also the overall quality expectations of the product that you want to deliver. So in aim, what I want to tell that every baker and producer faces unique constraints related to the materials and the equipment used in the baking process that can be, as I said, vary depending on the specific product being made. But these these variations, their fundamental steps, they remain consistent, and can be identified in almost any baking process. So this is the small diagram that we provided, and typically the process, it will begin with the selection of the ingredients. Of course, it can change from a simple recipe that consists just flour, water, yeast, or more difficult, more complex that include fat, sugars, and other potential additives. So once the ingredients are chosen, the next step it will be to homogenize and to mix it to create a consistent dough with the specific rheological properties like stainless, extensible, and elastic dough that will be essential for achieving the desired product characteristics. So following the mixing stage, after the dough will be shaped, also depending on the desired final product, it can be more elongated for the baguette, more round for a pizza, in various shape, rolled to, for example, to make a croissant or other different products. Subsequently, the dough will be also proofed, so that we will allow to develop and reach the desired volume, final volume. And on this stage, when it will be completed, the dough will be baked, cooled, and then can be enjoyed by the consumer or delivered to the consumer, of course. So in summary, while baking process may vary on different factors, such as also manufacture, it can define, as I said, the specific product that is being produced, the certain core steps like mixing, shaping, proofing, and baking, but these elements that they remain the same, almost we can find in each bakery process. So in the beginning of this year, we talked with you about the 2 webinars that we organized by CHOPIN Technologies, and we focused on the first part about mixing and the shaping. And today we're going to focus on another very important stage of the baking that is called proofing. And proofing is this magical process, if I can tell and use the word like that, because it will transform a dense mass of the dough into a tasty, aerated, well-risen loaf. So, as we observed, the baking process can exhibit a very wide range of variations, and the proofing stage is no exception, of course. We have also different arising factors. So the first and most prominent factor contributing to this variability is, of course, the choice of leavening agent. So what we can have, it can include the sourdough, which can exhibit varying tastes and acidity levels. It can be liquid yeast, it can be pressed yeast, dry yeast, so this is the yeast type. And additionally, of course, there is some baking process can include both the sourdough and the yeast. The second significant source of variability, this is, of course, the fermentation methods employed. As shown in the previous slide, we saw the few steps of the proofing. So it was incorporated multiple steps. So it was bulk fermentation, so initial proofing, and the dough second rise, so the final proofing. So it can contain the 2 steps. So beyond this, there are also other methods such as direct fermentations, pre-fermentations, delayed fermentations, and even fermentation involving freezing. And we can see that this diversity results from the combination of different various leavening agents and also the adaptation of various fermentation methods. It's contribute very rich variability of the baking possibilities. But what the one step in the common, this is of course the unique biological process. This is the process of the alcoholic fermentation. So in essence, what is that? The alcoholic fermentation, this is the operation that transforms the sugars into the simple substances like the glucose, into alcohol, into energy, and most important, this is into the carbon dioxide. So this production of the carbon dioxide is crucial for achieving the desired volume of bread. And it's important to know that this transformation is facilitated by yeast in anaerobic environment. That's meaning without the presence of air. So if we will come back and we will revisit a little bit of the history about the fermentation and to discover a little bit, it was used 4,000 years ago. And it first was discovered by the Egyptians around 400 years ago before Christ, were among the early practitioners of the fermentation. However, the true understanding of this phenomenon and how to say its description were shown recently in the 19th century by Louis Pasteur when he described the functionality into his works. And it's very important to emphasize that the fermentation, this is the fundamental process that employed not only the baking production, which we will talk about today, but also in creation of various alcoholic beverages like wine and beer. Moreover, fermentation takes in various forms. For example, we have lactic acid fermentation to create the yogurt, the acetic fermentation for the vinegar, and etc. So what we can see that this highlights one of the major role of the fermentation, that it's used in the agri-food industries, and it plays very important part in the creation of the numerous consumable products. So today we will focus on the bread making and bread fermentation. So in this process, I will be using the two words fermentation and proofing. When I'm telling about the proofing, that means I'm telling about the process. The fermentation, it will be more like a biological process. Just to distinguish these two. So in the process of the proofing play a very pivotal role in influencing a range parameters. For example, from development of the flavors of the bread, including the taste, including also the acidity. So it's a well-known factor, of course, that that if the fermentation period is longer, it will be more pronounced and complex the flours of the dough will become. So additionally, this fermentation process will significantly influences the biological characteristics of the dough. So for example, while mixing is the initial step, the dough will continue developing during the baking process and develop its proofing course, fermentation. So furthermore, fermentation also plays a vital role in determining the shelf life of the bread, of the final product, so whatever you do. So the longer the proofing period will be, the longer the product can be preserved. So that will contribute its overall quality and longevity. So in summary, proofing has a profound impact on various aspects of bread production, but its primary role is in achieving well-risen bread with the desired volume, the volume that can vary depending on preferences and products that each producer will do. So to summarize, the aim of the dough's proofing is to create well-aerated bread with the good volume. So what we can see, in order to produce a well-aerated bread with a good volume, it will be needed to produce a gas. It's important. So it will be needed that yeast work to produce this gas, and they will work less or more fast depending on the different factors. And we will see right now. So first of all, this, of course, the yeast-related factors. This is the amount of yeast. So for example, the yeast strain that will work less or more fast depending on its conditions, depending on this environmental where it present. And of course, the yeast producers nowadays propose different yeast strains that can be adapted to different type of the products, depending what the producer want to achieve. So after, we also have the different type of the yeast. This is dry and fresh yeast, and of course they will work differently. And depending, what is very important to highlight, that depending on the storage conditions where the yeast were conserved, it will show their activity. They will be less or more active. So for example, if I will tell that the yeast will be stored in very bad conditions a very long time, they can be partially or even totally be deactivated. Okay, so another factor, this is also the recipe factors. So the recipe factors, they can be, of course, the first ingredient, major ingredient, this is the flour, and other ingredients that are presented in the recipe. For example, as type of the fermentable sugar, some of them will produce gas very rapidly, others can produce the gas slowly, so that will lead to late production of the gas. And depending on that type, the quantity of the fermentable sugars, it will influence this gas production. So directly what we can tell that fermentable sugars that are, for example, that are already presented in the flour, in the recipe, they have the potential stock initially in the flour. For example, this is the components of the flour. This is the starch, the damaged starch and amylase that will allow to transform into the fermentable sugar. And of course, this transformation of starch, for example, in fermentable sugar will be more or less fast. That will depend, of course, of the activity of amylase and the quantity of its damage, for example, of the starch or damaged starch. And for example, if we'll talk about the damaged starch, so more will be damaged starch, more the amylase can react efficiently to produce these substrates that will be utilized by the sugars. So in other factors, this is the dough pH. As I said, the yeast, this is the live organism. It will be less or more sensible to the different types of the pH. The same, for example, way the yeast activity can be affected, what we call the osmotic pressure in dough. So to simplify, we know that the, for example, salt and sugar will increase the osmotic pressure. This is the capacity to retain the water. And globally, these elements that are present in the recipe, the water will have a tendency to migrate into the inside of the yeast cells, into the sugar or into salt, and the yeast will be less active, and then they will produce less gas. So you can see that amount of salt and sugar can have an important role on this dough. And also that there are the other elements as presence of inhibiting agents, acids, anti-mold agents, etc. So as far as we can see, there are factors that influence on yeast. This is the yeast-related factors, recipe factors, and of course we have factors like their environment factors. Because one more time, I will add it that this is the live organism, and they need to have an optimal environmental to work. So of course, the optimum temperature, hygrometry, and atmospheric pressure. And of course, it will, depending on the type of the yeast or sourdough, it can be changed. So for example, if the temperature will be too cold or too hot, the yeast will work less or more, depending on their optimum temperature. But for example, if it's very, very, very hot, they even can inactivate the yeast. So here we are. To summarize, in order to obtain well-aerated bread with a good volume, of course, it will need to produce the gas. And for this, the yeast is playing major roles, and we have several factors that affect their activity. Absolutely controlling their fermentation activity, we need, it's very essential. But it's not enough just to control the gas production, because what? Equally important in the dosability is also both to be extensible and tenacious, that will allow to deform by itself without the rupturing, because this deformability will try to retain the gas that is produced. And if it will be very tenacious, it will not take the gas. It will be very extensible, for example, we will have the hose and the gas will getting out. So to achieve the desired volume of bread, we need also have the both, not only gas production, but also gas retention. And if one of the both of these conditions are not met, it can be very challenging to obtain the final bread volume with what we expected. So this combination of these factors, they can introduce the overall quality and appearance of the bread. Okay, so what we can see concretely, this signifies one fact, that the bread that poorly developed with the bad volume, but from very diverse origins. So either origin that linked with the lack of yeast activity, so for example, not sufficient of the gas, or either to the retention of the gas. So the dough can be deformed, not retain, or the gas, or contrary, the dough can be not deformed at all. So all of these lead to the question, if we do not have achieved volume, is it to the production of the gas, or is it to do the retention of the gas? So indeed, when bread is poorly performed, like it's poorly developed with inadequate volume, so the root can be traced to the different regions, and the issue may come from the either differences in yeast activity resulting of insufficient gas production, or a problem, for example, to the gas retention, where the dough cannot effectively retain the gas. So as I said, this brings this fundamental question: how to know? Is it related to the production of the gas, or is it related to the combination of the gas, or even both? And of course, today's bakers can control their process by controlling the behavior of the dough during the process, from mixing to shaping and after to proofing. But this is the first approach, and it will be in some cases insufficient to make a precise and relevant diagnostic of these defects. So there are existing certain numbers of analysis and approaches is to verify, for example, the dough development. For example, we will put the dough in a small recipient, we will put into the four, into the certain conditions, and after we will see if the dough was raised. So it will help to know how the dough was raised, but how much it like, and also the how much it's raised, but we will not understand, for example, if it's not rising well, what is the reason. Okay, so this is the first approach, and we have for example, material that will help to also to see this dough development by recording its behavior. And if, for example, if it's fell down at what moment it fell down. So this is the first approach that will give us the dough development measurement, but it will not tell the reason why. Okay, so we have also another complete analysis to measure the gas production. And here, for example, we have the risograph that will help to have an idea what the quantity of the gas was produced by the yeast. So these approaches are, of course, very interesting to help the baker understand origins of these difficulties and better master the proofing process, but they have some limitations. And as far as I can see, this is, of course, that this is the two different distinct approaches, different methods. So we have two analyzers, so we need to, they have not the same conditions, they have not the same method, not the same temperature and environmental, so it will be very complicated to see the link between the two, for example, different tests from the two equipments. So while existing methods, they can show actually how much gas is produced and how much, for example, the dough is developed, how it's developed, they will not give us this something that will have combination of the both. And that's why we need to have some solution that will evaluate comprehensively all these parameters: gas production, gas retention, and dough development, that will help to master the bread processing process. And we have solution, and this solution exists, and it's called rheofermentometer. Few words about the rheofermentometer. This is not a recent device and exists from certain years. And this is number 4, so that's why this 4th generation, we call it rheofermentometer 4, so RHEO-F4. And this is the only one instrument that simultaneously measures the dough development, the amount of the gas produced, and the amount of the gas retained. Now we'll talk about how it works. Actually, it's very simple. So you need to place the dough sample into the test bowl, and after into the special chamber that will be very hermetized, that will create the conditions for the fermentation imposed by the protocol used. For example, it will be fixed temperature and etc. And we'll have this chamber that will has a special sensor here, and it will evaluate during the time how the dough was developed. So In the beginning of the test, the gas will be produced by the dough. The dough will rise and will displace this sensor and piston, as you can see on this video, that will help to measure the dough volume. So this is the first. Another, we can see another video, there is another sensor that will measure the pressure in the thermostically controlled tank that contains this dough. So this device, they will measure the total gas production, so the yeast action, and gas retention, the porosity of this dough. And it will be done thanks to solenoid valves. So the total pressure of all gases that will present in the bowl, they will go up. And after, we will see the pressure parameter, and one of two times the valves will be closed, and we will go through solenoid special filter with the soda lime that will retain this gas. And at that moment, we can see the dynamics of this proofing process. So this is the important information for determining, for example, the optimum proofing time and at what time you can put the dough into the oven. How to do? It's very easy, and it's reduced the operating time. So you need to prepare the dough in your mixer. So ensure it contains necessary ingredients, including the yeast. So the dough can be very simple, just flour, water, salt, or it can be more complex if you will put, for example, butter, some fats, sugar, and other additives. So the critical aspect is to maintain the consistency and reliability in the dough preparation. Of course, you will ask which mixer I can use. You can use any mixer, but you just need to be sure that it's stable and repeatable, and it will ensure the consistent the results, in order that you, for example, you will do few tests, you can compare these tests between. Okay, so after you extract the dough, also, for example, if you want to have a test, you can do by extracting the dough from lime, for example, after the mixing or after the shaping, and you can put into the bowl. So you put into the bowl, after you put into the chamber with the piston on the top, you close the chamber, you ensure that it's connected to computer, and after you will start your test. So after you starting the test, you will have the results that will be online, and you can follow these results. So what kind of the results we will achieve? In the end of test, we will have the results of the gas retention, gas production, and dough development. So first curves, you can see the gas fleece. First curve will indicate us the total amount of the gas producing during the test. The second curve will correspond to the quantity of the gas that was retained by the dough during the test. So as you can see, in the certain time, when the dough is not porous, all produced gas is retained, and we have the two curves that are superposed. And after the certain time, for example, after here, we can see that the dough started to become more porous, more fragile, and we have the two curves that are dispatched. We also have the third graph that will correspond to the dough development. So this also, what we can see, the parallel, the evaluation between these two graphs. So more I produce the gas, the more the volume of the dough will be. So we can measure a certain number of the parameters, of course. This is as maximum volume of the dough, maximum time, the time when it was produced, the final volume, the stability of this volume, maximum gas holding capacity, time to reach this volume, and more other parameters. So now this idea is to see how the device can help a baker to master the proofing process. That's why I want to come back to some consequences. And of course, now some consequences was taken from the INBP. So this is National Institute of Bakery and Patisserie. Thanks for them for this work. And globally, what we can see, that we have the two impacts on the quality of the produced dough and on the final product. For example, if we underproof, what we can have, we can have the lack of the strength for the dough. And finally, that it will lead to have poorly developed bread, very dense crumb. That means it's the gas retained inside, and it didn't have a volume that we want. Blistered crust also. But if it's overproofed, for example, it was proofing very a lot of time, we can have the excess of the strength, and after, of course, we can have the flatbread collapse. What does it mean? So, for example, the gas entered into the dough starting to increase in the volume, and after we have a rupture where the gas was getting out. So, and after, in the end, of course, we have the flatbread. So we can also imagine if we were doing in some bakeries in the home, this kind of the phenomenon. Also, we can have the pale crust, the flaken crust, and the crumbling crumb. So we can see there is a lot of different consequences if we will not control the proofing. And actually, this is lead to different challenges for the baker. And one of the challenges, this is, of course, to anticipate the proofing time. And it actually involves a lot of different expertise to understand even we need to put the dough early in the fur or in the oven, or if we can put a little bit late, or what is the optimal time. So bakers often rely on their expertise, as I said, and also on their senses. So they're using their eyes, their fingers, touches in order to assess this dough's readiness for the baking. So some key indicators that they use it, of course, they will look on the dough volume. They will see how it expands during the proofing. Is it okay? Is it the level that they want to achieve? If it's what is expected. After, they will look on the texture, on the consistency. They will look if it's extensible, if it's what that is needed, that this actually, if it's extensible, if it can support this gas that will be produced during the baking. And they will perform, as I said, the finger test. They will touch with the finger. They will see what the effect can have. And this is the visual consideration of what they have. And like that, they can also, after improve the time and temperature, monitor it, and to find the optimal what they have. But the fermentation time actually has a lot of factors that will influence this. And it's have the yeast, of course, as we talked a little bit earlier, this is the strain. For example, if it will be slow or rapid, tolerant to freezing, it depends on what process they use. If it will be fresh, dry, or liquid yeast, what quantity. It will depend also on the recipe. So if we will produce the bread or bun or a cake, of course, it will be different the proofing time. If we will add another ingredients, also the quality of the flour we need to consider, and different other ingredients. Another one, this is the process. Of course, for example, if we will use slow speed or a much more accelerated speed, of course, we have the connection with the other steps of the baking process, what kind of equipment we will use, etc. So you can see also there is a lot of factors, and yes, I forget about the environment. Also the temperature, the hygrometry, and atmospheric pressure. So it's very important, all the factors to master. So all this analysis, they made much more by the sensor evaluation. So the baker tried to adapt, but there is a lot of the factors that can influence on his adaptation. And sometimes it can be insufficient only to have this operator dependent expertise, because can you imagine if this operator that has this all know-how will be retired, or will change their production, or something else happen with them? Of course, all this knowledge will get out from him. So it's very important it's very essential to have this sensory evaluation. But on the other hand, we need to have something analytical, some tools that will help baker to make the precise prediction about, for example, the proofing times. So, and of course, one already said, this is technologies like RIA4 will help to us to get the numerous data registered, transfer from, for example, from one technician to another, from one producer to another, from one baker to another, and they will try to have this data, objective data, to complete the baker's expertise. So this combination of the experience and technology will allow baker to make more informed decision about when put the dough into the oven and ensuring that consistent and good quality of the products that they want to achieve. So now I will try to show you some benefits of the RO4, and of course I will make a description of the some examples. Some examples I will pass more times. For some examples I will go through just to show you the studies that we made. So on the first, of course, I will start with the selection and control of the yeast. Oh, I'm sorry. So how to find the right quantity of the yeast? So of course, it's not the secret that in the function of the quantity of the yeast that we put in the dough will have not the same result of the gas development. And of course, not the same result of the proofing. Of course, this is not surprise, but here we'll try to measure objectively what we'll see. For example, if the proofing will be more fast, what kind of the phenomena we can find. So that one example that we took. So we have same recipe, but everything else remained the constant except the three different doses of the same yeast. So we have 1.5 gram on the red curve, 3.5 gram on the yellow curve, and the blue, this is the 6.25 grams. So this is what we can see, that more the gas production is fast, that introduced by the dough development. The dough development will be faster and more important. So if we continue to analyze, we will find that the increase of the yeast quantity can also favorize the appearance more rapid of the dough's porosity. So if you compare the three graphs, you can see, for example, with the quantity of 6.24 grams, so we have porosity that it comes after 20-30 minutes. When, for example, for 1.5 gram, we have porosity that comes after almost 1 hour and a half. So what else we can see, that we can have a lot of yeast, and the gas production can be also rapid. As I said, the porosity will appear earlier. In some certain capacity of the yeast to produce the gas can decrease. So we can see progressively all kinds of details and characterize different phenomena. For example, also, if we will compare this blue graph, this is the exhaustion of the fermentable sugar. So what does it mean? So globally, the yeast, it was a lot of yeast, they were working a lot, and in the end, they didn't have any substrate that will help them to produce the gas. So in a certain moment, they will just stop to work. So of course, it's not unknown phenomena, but thanks to RIA4, we can find the optimal quantity of the yeast, and that we can use, and that we can master our proofing process in order to find the golden middle inside all of these elements. So another example, as I already said, that the yeast is a living product, and the quality will vary from one batch to another. And of course, it is important, like for example, with the flour, when we're receiving the flour from the truck, we will take some quantity of the flour, and for example, we'll make the alveograph analysis to check its elasticity, extensibility, and tenacity. This is the same idea, is to check the quality of your yeast, for example, if you get it from the suppliers, and to be sure that it's working the same way that it worked, for example, yesterday or 1 week after. And of course, the Rio is the perfect tool that adapted for this type of the control. So the same idea that yeast, as I said again, that it's very living product, and the quality of which will be altered by different storage conditions. For example, here we have the same recipe, we have the same yeast, we have their storage storage at 20 degrees, but we store it different long times. For example, we analyzed at first day, we analyzed after 7 days, 14, 21, 28. So what we can see here, so after some days of fermentation, the speed of the gas decreased and the total gas production also decreased, and actually the speed also decreased progressively. So that means that after a certain time, the yeast capacity to produce this gas was very slow. And for example, if we continue to store until, for example, 26 days, I think here, it can be almost be inactivated, because we stored for a very long time. So this is one of the thing that fermentometer can check. So check the storage conditions and to see how the, for example, yeast can be stored and, for example, how many days. So now we'll talk about the selection and control of ingredients. So the concept will be a little bit the same. So unsurprisingly, the quality of the flour is, of course, an important ingredient in bread making. So it has different impacts on the development of the dough rheology, like tenacity, extensibility, and elasticity. So while, for example, tool like alveograph that we use for the measuring dough properties is very important to control these rheological parameters, but also, of course, it's very important to control the flour's fermentative power. What is, if I can use this kind of the term? So this is especially to see the influences on yeast activity. So if we understand the composition of the flour, such as quantity of the amylase, activity, and for example, an amount of this damaged starch, it will be very vital for evaluating how effectively the flour stimulates this yeast activity. So these factors will play a key role in determining how well the dough ferments and how well it produces the gas, which in turn influences the final volume and texture, of course, of the bread. So what we can see is very important, not only control the rheological parameters, but also it's very important to see its fermentative power that we can control thanks to fermentometer. Okay, so we can also have, can see some other challenges, particularly when it comes to retaining the regularity change. For example, to consume the bread with less salt in the recipe. And we know that the quantity of the salt has an impact on the, of course, the taste aspect. Less we put the salt into the recipe, less, how to say, flavor it will be. So, of course, the baker need to adapt to find the solution, but not only, they also need to, from the rheological point of view, they need to see how this, because this actually ingredient that will stimulate the development of the, for example, gluten network more generally. So for example, if I can tell in the sample words, if I add less salt, I will have to find a solution to compensate it from the technical point of view. So, but we forget that the salt, if I will add more salt, the less active the yeast will be. And this is called a very known osmotic effect. That means if I have a recipe where I have to reduce the quantity of salt, I will have to adapt either the temperature, either their environment, or either the quantity of the yeast in order to achieve the product that I want. And of course, to see what the influences of the reduction of the salt is, the real fermentometer can help with that. Also, we saw that the volume can come from the gas production. Okay, so the solution to compensate, they can be very diverse. And one of them, of course, this is to use the alpha amylase. So if we can identify the problem, for example, is due to the lack of the substrate, so amylase activity of my flour, so we need to compensate it. For example, find a good enzyme. Of course, they can be different depending on the market available, but they can also have the different capacities. So that's meaning that we need to determine the optimum quantity of this amylase. And how to do that and how to see that, of course, we can use reaffirm to help with that. And conversely, the volume problem can come from the gas retention effect. And one solution is, of course, to add the gluten. So what gluten we'll put, what quality of the gluten, It can vary from one to another, and the characteristic can be also different. Here, once again, the Rio is a perfect tool for finding this answer. And of course, this is adaptation to new tendencies. So this is a very growing trend of consuming gluten-free products. Also, it's driven by two aspects. First, this is the health concerns, for example, like celiac disease. And the second, of course, this is the changing lifestyle choices. So people trying to eat healthier, trying to also, can be the question of the taste. And this highlights the very big interest of the consumers to consume the gluten-free products. That make it challenges also for the producers to create gluten-free products, because we can have the different kind of the materials. And we have for example, we made the studies with the two different recipes, and we observed the gas development, gas retention, and appearances of the porosity, and of course the development of the dough. And we could see the differences between these two recipes. So that will help us also to understand what, for example, material I can choose. If I choose, for example, the mix with the, for example, with buckwheat flour, or mix with the pea flour. So it will depend on you. But for example, you can analyze this kind of the parameters of your gluten-free flours thanks to a real thermometer. So now we saw some examples on controls and choice of the ingredients and the yeast. Now we'll talk a little bit about the process. And first of all, we'll see the, for example, this adaptation to the freezing. So what does it mean? So we know that some producers can also freeze their dough before putting into the oven. And what does it mean? So during the freezing, we have the yeast cells that can be damaged by the ice crystal formation, and they can be dehydrated. So bakers must therefore find an alternative solution to compensate this drop of for example, the drop of the gas production. And they need to, for example, use yeast more resistant to freeze. So to find the yeast that will be better for them to, for example, to freeze the dough, or for example, to add protective substances or increase the quantity of yeast. So to find the golden middle, they can use the real thermometer to discover what kind of yeast or material adaptation I need to do if I want to freeze my dough. Another example we will see, of course, it will be not a secret that the mixing time is impacting the development of the dough. And of course, this is the quality of the gluten network that will play a major role. But it also impacts the yeast activity, and especially on gas production. So one more time, real thermometer is here to help in an optimum mixing time that will be adapted to the process and to the final product. So the last example, this is an impact on environmental. Why I wanted to say about this? Because as I said, the yeast will work less faster or more faster, depending, of course, on the temperature of its environment, because it's a living organism and it will need to have this kind of optimal environmental in order to work. So, and again, thanks to the Rio, we can simply identify the optimum temperature and find out what the gas release, gas production, and development will be of the final product. And to find, of course, adapt, to find a better compromise depending on the final product that you want to produce. Okay, so now I will try to, I know there is a lot of information, but I will try to synthesize in a few slides what was said today. And first, of course, this is proofing. Proofing, this is the key step in the bread making process, but not only. We have also the mixing and shaping press, but it playing a major role also. And if it's very poorly controlled, it can lead to some defects in the dough, and also the defects that will lead to the appearances of the finished products. So that is very, very important, for example, for the customer expectations. So there are many proofing techniques that are finished products. For example, this is the time adaptation, type of the yeast, type of the process, but one point of the common, that this means that this is the alcoholic fermentation. The fermentation that will contribute to the holding of the dough, the development of the aromas, the preservation of the bread, but above all, of course, it will allow the production of the carbon dioxide that will ensure the well rising of the dough and the production of the aerated and voluminous bread. So we saw that the final volume of the finished products depends actually on activity of the yeast. So this is the quantity of the gas produced. But of course, it's not sufficiently only to control the gas that produced. We need also to see control the gas that is retained. So of course, this will major component that will play. This is the quality of the glutenate, for example. So we need to control these two parts, and of course, this is the art of the baker to find the right balance between these all parameters and to find what it will be adapted for him. Okay, so as I try to explain by examples, we have a tool that is more adapted to all these things. And this is the Rio Fermentometer, Rio A4, and it will help you to select and control yeast batches, to select and control the different ingredients of the recipe, to optimize the production process, and also to control environmental conditions as best as possible. Okay, so this one example that you, of course, saw in the previous webinars, and we, CHOPIN Technologies, is proposing adapting solutions to your needs. So to do or even to replace, to add something or even to replace the sensory control. So we have the instrumental analytical instruments at your disposition that will help you to save your know-how. So this is the equipment as a Dematic, Alveolab, Mixolab 2, and Rio 4 that are perfectly adapted to analyze, for example, and control water absorption, dough consistency, extensibility, elasticity, and proofing and volume. So you can consult all these solutions and also you can consult other webinars that we made before in our YouTube channel made by CHOPIN Analytics. And to summarize, so we also were focused a little bit on Chopin today, but I will try to present all game of the KPM group that will produce, of course, it will show their CHOPIN Technologies products for the functional and neurological analysis for grain, flour, and dough. But also we have some kind their NIR and RF moisturizer and composition analysis. And that will help also to control quickly. And another, this is our machine that called Sightline A Pro. This is the vision inspections for created for the food production and, for example, the packaging lines. So if you want to have much more information about that, don't hesitate to visit our website. Okay, so that's it. Thank you a lot for your attention. I will see if we have some following questions. Okay. So, okay. Do we have questions? Okay, one of the questions that I got, if got only 2 bubbles inside bread, need to reduce the sugar or salt. It actually depends on you. So you can analyze, for example, by yourself, for example, with the Rio Fermentometer to see if, for example, it gives, if it will reduce the sugar, what kind of effect it will give. If it will reduce salt, what kind of effect it can give. And you can actually to find this answer, okay? Another question, how often we need to change the soda lime? Okay, this is a very good question. Actually, it depends on, it's not we are measuring, not in the time, so we're measuring more about it will depend on the changes of the color. For example, we have the soda lime, it will become much more purple. It will means that this soda lime is already used. And of course, you have the two choices to Either you need to change the soda lime completely, either you can open to make the CO2 to go into the environmental, and like that it will be refreshed and you can reuse it. So but the question is really it depends on your use. If you use it every day, if you don't use it every day, if you use really frequently, so it will also depends, but what your indicator will be the color. Okay, so another question, what is the weight needed to perform Maria test? Okay, to answer this question, this is actually I want to tell you that it's not standardized test. That means that we don't have the exact quantity, but our protocol, for example, that we used, it's around 300 grams of the dough that you need to use, for example, for the test. The other type of mixers impact proofing or in the final product quality? Do the mixers are better or not? Yes, of course, the different kind of mixers that will impact can impact the proofing, and you can see the first webinar that we made, and we talked about that. That of course the mixing will impact, but for example, I cannot answer if the 3D mixers are better or not, because we are not the specialist of making the mixers. So I think to answer these questions, I need to have much more research and much more expertise in this kind of the mixers. Okay, I will see if we have another questions. Okay. Do we have another questions? Okay, I cannot see any questions. Okay, so I would like to thank you again. Thank you again for your attention. So I will stop this webinar for today, but don't worry, if you have another question or specific question, of course, you can contact us at sales.com, and we will help to answer to them. So I will really thank you for your participation. I hope it was really interesting. And I remind that this session is recorded, so you can see the link. You will receive the link, and you can see also the video that will be available in YouTube channel in CHOPIN Analytics very soon. So here we are. So thank you again, and see you soon in our future episodes of the Baker and Miller. Thank you. Bye.